Great to be getting everyone into the room. Thank you very much for joining us again. We'll give everyone just a moment for the technology to bring everybody in. Really excited on this session to be joined by Emma Cook, and I'll introduce her properly in a moment, from Cognisoft, who are our sponsors of the Digital Technology Conference this year and last year, which is really exciting. So just making sure we get everybody in. Okay. So hopefully you were able to join us this morning for our first session with Sian from Practice Labs, and hopefully you were able to join us yesterday. If you were able to join us yesterday and this morning, you'll know how this all works. Get your app open, get the desktop open, get engaging, start chatting through the app, please. You won't be able to chat through the Zoom link, so it's really important you chat through the app. Loads of competitions there, loads of sponsor booths to go to. Make sure you go to sponsorship exhibitor booth number 4, which is where Cognisoft are. They can tell you lots of things. You're going to learn, I'm sure, quite a bit about Yeti. You should have actually seen the video also in the lead up to this presentation about Yeti, so you should be all pretty well briefed on Cognisoft and what it does by now. Don't worry, we won't be asking questions about your knowledge, but it's really, really interesting. I'm sure we'll be interested in your questions and your chat in a little while. Once Cognisoft have delivered their presentation today, we'll have the Digital College coming up at 12:45, and then we're all going to the manic, crazy space, which is the speed networking. I did this yesterday. It's so much fun. I will encourage you to do it. If you download the app, it's really easy. You press the button, you're in, and you get on with it. So it's really, really great. So that's a reminder about the competitions, a reminder about the app. Please get networking, please get engaging, please make sure that you connect with as many people as possible. That's the main reason why we're here. But without further ado, we've got Emma Cook, who's the Managing Director of our sponsors, Cognisoft Limited. Emma will be speaking about supporting advisors in their digital journey, ensuring advisors are not only comfortable with the technology they have, but also making sure they're delivering the best service possible for their participants. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, everybody, for joining the session this morning. I'm just going to share my screen and get the PowerPoint ready and get that starting. So thank you. Sorry, it's not. There we go. Thank you to Scott. It's been a great conference so far. I know we're only on day 2. But I'm sure you'll all agree the app is making a huge difference to an online conference. It's brilliant so far. The session that I'm delivering this morning is going to explore the importance of your advisors understanding the systems that they're being asked to use in order to be able to use them competently and confidently. And that in return, that the system then delivers you as the owner of the system what you need from it. My experience is within case management systems that deliver KPI outcome and claim and export information. But the principles for what we go through actually extends to any IT systems that you ask your employees to use. So I've worked for Cognisoft. This presentation, sorry, is being delivered in conjunction with Andy Tellum. Although Andy is not presenting, he's been a key source of information for me in putting this presentation together. So I've worked for Cognisoft for over 30 years. I started here as an office junior, moving on to support and then becoming a trainer and then in charge of implementation. In 2000, I was made a director, and then I was made managing director last year. In my role, I've overseen or personally implemented hundreds of systems ranging from single user systems up to 600 user system implementations. Andy is currently the head of information systems for Advisor. And Advisor are a prime contractor for the National Careers Service. They've used Yeti for the last 2 contractual rounds for the National Careers Service. But Andy's career spans over 30 years. He's experienced in delivering and shaping careers guidance and employability contracts. His broad experience in information advice and guidance, operational management, and a range of ICT, management information systems, data security, and related functions. He's twice been seconded to the Department for Education, working as a member of technical and policy teams. He's a diploma in careers guidance and a master's degree in case management systems, as well as a range of data protection and information security qualifications. Andy and I first met, actually neither one of us wants to admit how long ago it was, but it was 25 years ago, I think we worked out the other day, when we installed our careers application into the company that Andy was working for at the time. He was part of their training team and over the years progressed to be part of their senior leadership team and head of innovations. In his career, he's been responsible for procuring and implementing IT systems, including our systems, a numerous amount of times actually. These are some of the sectors that we support. So it's around employability, skills, getting people back into work, information, advice and guidance. So that's the range of sectors, but we are dedicated within this guidance sector and we've been delivering systems since 1984. So there's an expectation of digital confidence and competence in the workforce. We assume everyone is tech savvy because we have Instagram, Facebook, social media accounts in our personal lives. There's an assumption that these skills are transferable to other applications. However, when the transfer is to a more rigid application, is that a fair assumption to make? And are we providing the best support for our advisors? Advisors are employed primarily for their people skills, their ability to empathise and work with long-term unemployed to overcome barriers. Yet they're expected to record all of their activity along the way, signpost participants to online courses, carry out online meetings, use new technology and software, all with an air of proficiency in front of a participant. So what can we do, especially now in this time when there's so much remote working and learning, to ensure that our advisors are confident in the systems that they need to use? So in all the conversations I've ever had with Andy, he's always advocated the essential building blocks to delivering any successful programme. These are people, process, and technology. Each of these are equally as important as each other, and they all need to be aligned. You have to employ the right people with the right aptitude for getting your participants into work. But if they don't understand and contextualise the technical requirements and how it fits with the operational process, it's going to cause friction. The system is developed to deliver a technological solution for an operational process, but how do we get your advisors to use it effectively? The user's journey has to start with the story. So what is it that the technology is there to achieve? What's expected of the user and why? And what's the impact on funding of what they're recording? In terms of case management software, why are you asking them to record all of the details of the interactions being carried out? In all my years of experience, when training end users, their first thoughts are usually, you're monitoring my activity, you're checking up on me. In reality, it's that case management is there for the advisor to help the advisor. So imagine you're going into a favourite restaurant. The restaurant owner always remembers that every time you visit, remembers how you like your steak, or that you usually dine before going in to see a show, or the salesperson that remembers your birthday, or the names of your children, or the fact that you took a holiday a month ago and asks how it went. These details make you feel special and valued, yet they'll all be noted down somewhere on a system to be recalled when you visit or when the salesperson calls you. This is why telling the story with case management systems is so important. When case size is around 80 participants, it aids the advisor so they know what they last did with a given participant. No rooting through pads or trying to remember and searching through Excel spreadsheets. The information is there at their fingertips. They can pick up where they left off. But more importantly, so can a colleague to cover holidays and sickness. This helps the participant to receive a seamless experience. There's nothing more frustrating as a customer in any situation having to go over old ground. Effective case management is the cornerstone of relationship building and allows for complex case management, storing all of the important details of the participant at the fingertips of the user. This is why the story is so important for the advisor. They need to see the benefits, not only to them, but those that they're trying to help. The use of the system needs to be explained to them. Ooh, sorry, should have moved on. needs to explain to them how it fits into the bigger picture, the benefit of the participant and your organisation before they start to use it. If the end user of the system, your advisors, are involved in the story, they're more likely to use it effectively, as that friction I mentioned earlier is dissipated. As the government progresses its digital first strategy, the technology gap is closing. However, there is still a resentment towards technology in customer support roles. As mentioned previously, advisors are primarily hired for people skills, and the technology, especially case management systems, can often be seen as a barrier to working, as it eats away at time with the participant and creates, in face-to-face environments, a physical barrier. In this digital age where more working is remote, the tools you want them to use can also be seen as a barrier. If your users are not skilled enough, just because they may have joined a family Zoom call during lockdown doesn't make them an expert in delivering and hosting or learning from online meetings and sessions. So when implementing a new system, it's important to ensure that the system benefits and gives something back to the user, as well as provides everything needed from an organisational perspective. Make it easy to use. Prompt the user when they need tasks to be completed. Prompt the user when key information is missing. Make it easy to recall data and case notes, and you'll get their engagement and their buy-in. Recognise that the advisor's main function is the participant, but being able to evidence the success of one programme helps in the bid for another, and therefore in turn enables you as an organisation and they as an advisor to help more people. By making it easy and providing benefits for the user, they're more likely to record the data that's needed. Make the system intuitive and able to capture everything quickly and easily. Without effective data recording, you can't get the outcomes that you need. You need to be able to evidence to support your programs or bids for future contracts. You need to evidence funding providers and stakeholders. You need to seamlessly help individual participants on their journey towards work, and also to make the advisor's job easier. For case management systems, all of this also gives richness to your data and provides the KPI management information or outcome data that you need. However, as your data grows in your system, it starts to have depth and breadth to it, enabling you not only to provide your evidence for your programme, but also to target your service delivery where it is needed. You can start to look for patterns and predict possible outcomes. At his previous company, which is working with young people in schools as a careers advisor, Andy used the richness of his data that he'd built up over a few years to look for indicators for young people at risk of becoming NEET. They identified that if certain data items A, B, and C, were recorded against a young person, then there seemed to be a 70% chance of that young person becoming NEET, not employment and education. Therefore, they could target their services towards those young people who had those indicators to help prevent future negative outcomes. Andy oversaw all of that work, and he used the system to be able to help him and the data to be able to help him. You have to be careful though, because as data allows you to look for possible outcomes, you shouldn't use it for absolute prediction. Data enables you to investigate causes and target services helping the user, a key focus for the advisor. So if you look at employability, we do a lot of assessment recording, outcome stars, those kind of things. And you can see how a particular person, an individual participant, grows in regular assessment factoring. However, if you look at a cohort of individuals going through the same process, then you start to see trends in data. So does one advisor's group perform better than another? And by performing, I mean, are they progressing towards that target? And if so, why? All that data does is tell you the direction of travel, but then you can look into that information. So are they using a different service provider to help for, say, things like motivational, financial help? Is the advisor doing something different that can be replicated across the board with other advisors, sharing best practice? Are they dealing simply just with a different cohort? One advisor has a group of cohort that's slightly harder to help than another. So going back to the original question, how do we ensure all our advisors are fully equipped to use the technology that we're asking of them? There's a number of answers to this. There's no one magic bullet. So these are the items that we've identified and that seem to be replicated across the board. The first one is, whenever you're putting a system in and you're going to ask people to use it, ensure you know what it needs to be doing for you. So you need to understand the outputs. What are those outputs going to be? What if they're key performance indicators, outcome measurements, exports, reporting to funding bodies, interested parties? They need to be identified early doors and get them built in and make them part of the story that you're going to tell to your advisors. There is no good implementing a system and then at the end of it, popping up with a new requirement saying, also, we need to do this. If the data hasn't been built in from the start, you're not going to get it out at the end. Training is a key factor in getting your advisors to understand what they're doing. You need to train your system, your users on the system, and you need to time that training very well. There's no point training anybody on a system more than 2 weeks in advance of the go live or when they're expected to use it. The closer you can train someone to the go live date, the better, because we're all human, we all forget. What will happen is you'll train them, they'll start to use the system and they can't remember what to do. So make sure the training is adequate and as close as possible to the go live as you can make it. Is the style that you're going to train them in the right style? These days, we've got an awful lot of online learning. It used to be very much face-to-face courses. Now there's a mixture of online learning and face-to-face. Can your user actually learn online? Are we just going to deliver them a course on something like Zoom or other meeting platforms and expect that they'll remember? Do they have the right concentration span to be able to learn on live? I know for definite, I don't. I cannot spend a day on a course, even though we deliver those kind of things, because I know it's not my learning style. So what are you doing to identify those barriers to learning and then addressing them when you put in new systems? Are you looking at whether the training is appropriate to what you're asking them to do? If your training is held online, there is generally less engagement. We all sit there and we're sort of listening to the trainer going ahead. You've got your phone next to you, you've got your emails popping up. Concentration levels lapse very easily, especially online. You haven't got the engagement. You can't see the whites of their eyes. You can't see that blank look that slowly comes across somebody's face as you realize they're not getting it. So you need to make sure that the way that you're delivering your courses fit the types of advisors that you've got. What you used to be able to deliver perhaps in a half a day or a full day session may not fit anymore. And you might need to break it down and do a few hour blocks at a time. 2 hours on this subject, 2 hours on that subject, even shorter if necessary. Then look at the follow-up. So you've trained them. You've given them a couple of sessions. Their go live date is next Monday. What happens on go live? What support have they got following it? They're brand new to the job. Potentially it's a brand new program. The user walks through the door, sits down at the computer, and everything just goes out the window. Where are they going for help? Who are they going to contact? What additional training are you going to provide for them once they've gone live? Have you perhaps organised the training to fit the way that they'll use the system? Everything they need for the first couple of days of usage will be trained on first. Maybe follow-up training for the next part and then the next part. Your training can go on, especially online, it can go on over a period of time to ensure that they get what they need to understand. Going back to telling the story needs to be delivered from top down. Systems always need to be driven from the very top, from the highest level of management that you can possibly get. Your advisors need to see that the system is being taken seriously by the company as a whole. There's no point buying a system and having that age-old argument of, well, operational people wanted to get it, but the technical department paid for it or did the procurement for it. So nobody owns the system. And that's a key failure for a system. So make sure it's driven from the top down. When I first met Andy and we were doing the training for the careers advice system at the time, the training materials that were given out to their users, and again, going back 23 to 25 years, whatever it was, the front page of their training materials had a message from their chief executive, and she explained why the system was being implemented and how important it was to the business. She told the story right from the very beginning. Even though it was Andy and his colleagues delivering that training to the end users, the message was there from the chief executive of that organisation. The right scene was being set from the very beginning. The users understood why the system was procured, why they were being asked to use it, and what it was going to do. So with the training that we talked about earlier, Andy was part of a group of careers advisors who were being trained up to deliver training to the rest of the users. So we call it the train-the-trainer model. It's a fairly well-used methodology of training. What the premise of this is that you take a group of users and you train them slightly more highly than you would all the other users, and they go off and deliver the training. It's more beneficial. We can go as Cognisoft, we can come into any organisation and we can train your staff. However, we don't live and breathe your operational processes. So we can train you on the system and we can apply it to the operational processes that we're aware of. However, using your own staff, they've been trained upon the system and your operational processes, and they're going to do the job themselves, or they already are doing the job themselves. It's really important that that comes across to the other advisors that they're training. So there's a degree of empathy there. One of Andy's tips when selecting your trainers are to look for people with a good blend of operational experience and a comfort with IT or technology. They don't have to be experts. They just need to be comfortable with it. It's actually quite difficult to break a technical system because hopefully it's been through a large degree of testing. But what you do want is for somebody to be able to be comfortable with it and also to understand your processes. And then finally, the system, the quality of the data. So once you have implemented a system, it's quite quickly forgotten as you move on to other things. It's important to regularly review the data quality. Are you getting what you expected when you first implemented? And if not, why? With a new program, you've devised an operational requirement on paper. It will inevitably require tweaks as it moves into practice. You can't design everything and get it right first time. And then translating that into a system where you're saying, we will do this, this, and this with our participants. And then you make the system support that journey. A system should never really drive a participant journey. It should always support it. If you don't get it right first time, which is inevitable, we don't expect that to happen. You need to be able to make tweaks. You need to be able to monitor that what you have said you're going to do is actually the right thing to do when it goes into operational practice. And if you have to make tweaks, you get those done. Monitoring the quality of an actual advisor's data is also equally important. So again, it comes back to that training. Do they really understand what they need to do? If they're missing steps out, or they're missing bits of data out, or they're just not comfortable, how do we go back and correct that? Do we need to give them additional training? Or do we just need to tweak the system to tighten it to make sure that they can't move from step A to step B without putting that piece of data in? All of those things just need monitoring. What we implement on day one shouldn't be the same as what you're using on day 365, a year later, 2 years later, because it will change. So in terms of getting the system to support that data, that leads us on to the final point about don't make your system too rigid. So by rigid, we have a business logic layer that sits within the case management system. And again, it's a common thing to be able to do. Call them business rules or a business logic layer. And all that says is when I put this piece of data in, it's got to be in this format. So a very easy version is a title field has to have a certain amount of fields in it. And if I've used the title field of a Mrs., perhaps I need the gender to be female. So that's a business rule when you're connecting those two pieces of data together. When you build your business logic layer, it's very easy to sit there and again on paper to say, right, it's going to have to do this, 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 and this, and we're going to build it and we're going to lock it all down. If you do that, you're going to make it too rigid from day one until you've really realized how the users use it. Just as nature finds a way and a plant will grow around obstacles, it'll tie its roots around whatever's coming through and it will carry on growing. A user will actually find alternative ways to record data. And this is what you need to be careful of. If the system is too rigid, you'll start to find information being recorded on spreadsheets, on local disks, in a notepad, in somebody's drawer. And this is where you then have a myriad of problems. First of all, the quality of your data is now diluted. So what we were talking about before, the breadth of your data, the depth of your data, being able to see what's going on, but also just that case management information, what's actually happening, and more importantly, your outcome evidence. If things are not being recorded properly, you are going to miss out on key pieces of data. But not only that, the security of your data. If you now have bits of information popping up on spreadsheets, you can't control that data. You are now potentially, you have sensitive information about participants being saved on local hard disks. Are the machines encrypted? Are they BitLockered? Is it secure? What's to stop them emailing that data around to themselves, to other people? How do you keep it up to date once it's in a spreadsheet? Where's the up-to-date version of that spreadsheet? What happens if the data gets updated again? They see the participant, where are they going to put that information? So it causes all sorts of problems. And this is not just in our industry, this is across the board. People will find ways to record data if the system that they are using doesn't allow them to record it in a way that's intuitive. So what you need to do is create your system in the offset and put just enough rules in. Somebody yesterday, I was on a training course yesterday and I liked the phrase, they called it the Goldilocks rule. Not too much, not too little, just right. And it's a really difficult blend to get, but you have to get it just right. If you make it too rigid, the users will struggle. And we implemented a system quite a few years ago now for one of the DWP programs where a participant had to have an interview booked every month for 5 months. That was the nature of the program. And so we were asked to automatically, when the participant first starts and you create that first interview, to then automatically in the diary of the advisor, create those next 5 interviews a month apart. You times that up with a caseload of 80 or 80 plus, that diary, it very, very quickly gets full. They allocated specific time slots. They wouldn't allow more than one session to take place at any one time. So you couldn't work with one participant and be doing something else with someone else and have that evidence on the system at the same time. We sat there in the design meeting and tried to tell them not to do it. But it was their program. They knew how they wanted to do it and off they went. About a month into it, I walked into an office, one of their branches, and when I announced where I was from, the woman in front of me almost burst into tears. She turned her monitor around and she showed me her calendar and it was full. And she stood there close to tears and said, when do I take time off? When do I have a break? How do I take a holiday? What if I'm sick? All of those things added to the stress of that user. That could have been avoided. All we needed to do is have a rule that when the first appointment was put in, we automatically create the second. And then when the second appointment takes place, we then create the third and we allow the data to build up. so that you don't stress the user out. It's so important that you think about the consequence of what you're going to ask your system to do. So if you take nothing else away from today, remember that your people, your technology, and your processes will change. All three of them will change over the course of a program or a contract. So you need to be able to adapt. You need to be able to adapt your systems to keep up with operational changes. You need to be able to adapt your people to keep up with system and process changes. And your operational processes also need to adapt if they're not working. So all of those three are interlinked. What you install, as we said before, on day one will not be the same as 2, 3, 4 years down the line. They will change. So review the use of your system regularly. Ensure it's kept up to date with operational changes so it can continue to support the process. But most importantly, make sure your advisors are able to use it effectively, provide refresher training, provide guidance, provide super user support or help, provide internal use and support. Don't just assume that because you've delivered them a 1 day or a half a day training course on whichever system it might be, that they're now experts, because they won't be. So keep an eye on what your advisor is doing, keep an eye on the data, and keep an eye on the system. And that's me. I've actually finished very early. I think I spoke quicker than I thought I was going to do. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for listening.
Hi, Emma.
Hi.
So, hi. We have a comment in here from Andy, and I think it was inspired because as I was reading it, getting ready to read it to you, you mentioned one of the words. So Andy says, as well as train the trainers, maintaining a super user group when a system is normalized in operation also contributes to continuous development and innovation.
Yes, if anybody's, I think, is that Andy Tellum? Has he joined?
It is, yes.
So great, thank you. Hi, Andy. He was going to try and join us, but originally he couldn't make it. So if anybody's got any questions for Andy around his expertise about putting these systems in, please ask those in the comments as well. But yeah, he's absolutely right. That train the trainer group becomes your little group of super users, whatever you might want to call them. And that model works so well to have a more highly trained group of users who understand the system a bit better, who are there in local offices to provide support to the rest of the users who might be able to either spot somebody struggling in the office or to provide the refresher training that we were talking about before.
Absolutely nothing. There's nothing better than being trained by someone who actually uses it in the same way you do and understands it. I completely agree. Now, I've had a question come in on the Q&A from Bronner, and I'm not quite sure. I'm going to read it out, but Bronner, if you're still here, I know you're in the session. Maybe you could pop in chat if I'm reading this wrong. But it says, how is the safety net in the operation for this digital support? So I'm not quite sure. That's what it says. So Bronner, if you are here, if you can either pop your hand up and we could unmute you, or you can pop something into chat. That would be great.
I wouldn't even that.
While we're waiting for Bronner, Catherine has said, would you recommend the users get to see, demo, try out a new system before it is selected and implemented?
So implementing and selecting a system is quite an interesting thing. It's useful to have representation from users. We've had all sorts of scenarios with people when they're buying a system. It ranges from a pure tender, which is just paper-based and nothing else. That is my worst case scenario, because how can you buy a system off a piece of paper? Anybody can answer a question in the way that they want to make it fit their system. You need to see it. Who sees it? And I would always recommend you add a demonstration phase into your procurement exercise. Who sees it? That's quite important. So I would put together a working group and have maybe a representative from your IT department, so they understand what's going in, from your operational teams, and from the user base. but keep it small, because what do they call it? Decision making by committee actually gets to be quite difficult. So you need a very small, concentrated group represented across the board, with, again, a standard sort of format of things that you're looking for in each system that you see.
That's wonderful, thank you. Bronna's not come back to us at the moment, so she may have had to step away. I know she's still in the session. So have we got any other questions for Andy and Emma while we have them on? Just waiting to see if any more come in.
I'm multitasking here, Helen. As you know, that's not my forte digitally. So I'm seeing if there's anything here on the chat.
I can't see anything in the chat myself at the moment. Bronna, oh, she's having technical hitches. The question relates to GDPR safety.
Mm-hmm. So, funnily enough, that was the course I was on yesterday. So GDPR is interesting. So we host systems, you are the data controllers, and you need to abide by your GDPR principles for recording the data. Depending on the contract, there will be requirements put on you by the funding provider as to what data they want to see. Anything above and beyond that, you need to decide your reasons for processing that data, which from the 6 principles, there are a couple that really do fit in terms of your legitimate interest in order to deliver the service to the person, to the service user. You need to make sure that all of your data is accurate. So you need to make sure your staff are trained in the principles of GDPR, but also data protection and data security. So, you know, they shouldn't be, in systems like ours, we've got note sections, for instance. You have to be careful what you write. So we have a bit that enables an advisor to see if there's an issue with a participant maybe that's got a history of being potentially violent. And it just has a little indicator that pops up. How you do that, you need to train your advisors on the use of that. But what they shouldn't be doing is saying, I walked in the office and my participant had an angry look on the face, looked a bit red and angry, and I think they might do something. That is not part of the principle. It has to be something that is accurate and time bound and happened. So if there is an incident where that participant got angry, that is something that you can put into the system, but just because you feel they might do at some stage, you can't. So all of that should be tied up with your training, but the amount of data that you're recording and what you're expecting them to record starts at the very beginning of the process, along with those outcomes actually of what are you going to expect your advisors to record. The note sections for things on case management systems are really important. You do have to record the conversations, and there's a reason for that, and that is in the delivery of what you're doing with them, and that sort of seamless interaction we talked about earlier. But obviously the language has to be appropriate. So again, you should be monitoring your systems to ensure that there is appropriate language going on. I don't know if Andy's still on, but he's probably got some experience and some advice to go with that kind of thing as well.
We can unmute Andy. I can see he's still here. So if Andy would like to add anything, we can invite him to do so.
I'll just pop him on the spot. He loves it.
Yes, that's what I like to do as well, as you will know, usually with Scott. But here we go. Here's Andy.
Hi, thanks very much for that. Yeah, I mean, I think you're bang on, Em. I mean, one of the principles that we always employed previously, and again here where I am now, is making sure that anything is owned and attributable as well. So statements that are not clearly attributable to an individual it's where people come unstuck. So it should be as factual as possible. But if it made somebody feel like something, or somebody's behavior actually was made somebody feel uncomfortable, as long as they own it and say, this is my statement and this is my comment on there, you know, that's a best practice thing as well. Some of the best practices, of course, are getting or explaining to the individual that you're going to be recording some information, but doing so in such a way that it's not antagonistic in itself. I mean, I'll just share a little anecdote with you. We used to run tests over data narratives in notes. And we had a very unfortunate moment. We used to look for profanities in recording that weren't encapsulated in quote marks, because of course some of our clients would be quite expressive during interventions. But we had a very interesting one where, and I'm sure you can imagine what the missing letter was, somebody had unfortunately misspelt shift work and said, I don't mind that work. It suits me down to the ground. So it's always a good thing to run your data quality through, because bear in mind that obviously at any point the individual has the right to see the records that are held about them. So don't write anything down that you're not prepared to back up. Is that okay? That's me put on the spot. Thank you, Emma, for that.
Pleasure, Andy.
Okay, so we don't have any more questions or comments coming at the moment, but yes, that has put a smile on my face. We've all mistyped things before and been mortified, haven't we? So
yeah, and I think Andy's point about the subject access request is absolutely valid. They have a right to see absolutely everything that's been written about them. So obviously the advisors need to know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and have in mind at any point, if the service user wants to see that data, is it appropriate?
excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you to Andy for being the person put on the spot this time round. As Helen states, it's normally me, and she relishes the opportunity to do that at any particular point in time that she can. So thank you very much, Emma. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, energy and commitment, and also to Cognisoft and yourself and your team for your time, energy and commitment, bringing this whole conference to our employability practitioners and anyone else that's on the sessions. It's already shaping up to be a really interesting event, and as you said, I think as you started, the Hoover app is making the experience even more engaging and interesting. On that point, just before I give you a proper big thank you, Emma, make sure that you engage with the app. Lots of competitions, lots of opportunities to engage, lots of exhibitor booths to visit. Number 4 is Cognisoft. Please get there, have a look around, see what goes on, watch some stuff, get some content, and of course, gain some knowledge and learning, which is really important. There's a photo competition. There's an opportunity to win tickets for our summit next month, which is a pretty special leadership conference with very few tickets available in the Royal Society in London. So we'd be really happy to have somebody around, and we're offering accommodation and train tickets for that as well. So it'd be a really great day out of learning and engagement again. So we're back here at 12:45 with Bill Coleman from the Digital College. Suffice to say now, thank you very much, Emma Cook from Cognisoft. That was an absolutely brilliant session, and we look forward to seeing everybody on the other side. Remember to head over to the booths, remember to do your stuff, upload your pictures. Helen's put a picture up there, I believe, with her dog chewing the carpet on the stairs. So you've got a lot to do to win over that one, but I'm sure you can do it. So we'll see you all on the other side. Thank you very much again, and see you in a moment.
Thank you.